cops come.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a day for us, man. The cops come and, they come with their guns blazing, right? They got the guns out, putting us all on the ground. I got my nice little fit on, my jean
So
jacket.
you're on the ground.
So now I'm all dirty. Right?
Wow, because they don't know what's happening. You just call the cops, they don't know
they don't know who's doing, right?
Yeah.
So they got to secure the scene, right? So, I understand that, but I'm back there in the backyard, face down in the dirt.
With guns.
With guns on me, and I look up, and there's a cop that's standing up on the fence with a shotgun pointed at me.
Wow.
Yes. I thought,
small town or what?
Right?
I thought, great. God, you brought this amazing man into my life, and now that's it, Well, that's a test right there.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm looking at them, thinking, all he need to do is slip, fall off that thing, and that's it for me, right? But that didn't deter me. I mean, I've been through some rough stuff.
Came back.
That didn't deter me.
If I get through this,
it was the Raider sweats that it was stuck in his mind. Welcome to Couples Unfiltered, a podcast where we discuss love, loss, relationships, and the journey. I'm Lionel Salisbury.
And I'm Natalie Galley Salisbury. Keep in mind, we are not licensed therapists, so these discussions are solely based on our life experiences and our opinions.
Today's episode, we're joined by Beatriz Palmer, a passionate leader in social justice, diversity, and community empowerment, and her devoted husband, John Palmer, her Black Superman, as she lovingly calls him. Beatriz leads transformative work in her community, but behind her success is John's unwavering support, quietly fueling her mission with love and dedication. While he prefers to stay out of the spotlight, his steady presence is essential to her ability to lead with strength and conviction. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John and Beatriz Palmer.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
You're very welcome.
Welcome
Excited.
in. So happy to sit down with you all. If we can start off with B, if we can call you.
Yes, my friends call me B.
Okay.
So yes. And you spell your name with a Z. Z, yes. That's how I do the rhymes. B with a Z. Yes. Love it.
So let's start by discussing you and your dynamic, how you grew up, and what led you to the moment of meeting John.
Wow, how much time do we have? Well, picture this. It was 1990. I was just out of high school. That's when I met John. But I'll go back even a little further. I grew up in Oceanside. I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I'm one of 7 siblings. 7 siblings. I'm the only one that was born in Mexico. My parents immigrated here. My mother is the only child to a natural-born citizen, but back in the 1930s, my great-grandparents found themselves rushing back to Mexico after the Great Repatriation happened, which ironically, we're going to see that soon happen here again with this new administration. So,
And the Great Repatriation was when they deported a bunch of people back to Mexico, regardless of knowing the origin of where they were born. Okay.
Nice, Natalie.
Well, I mean, I do homework. The 20s and 30s, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was probably the second biggest immigration change we saw here in the United States.
Right.
That was racialized. Then the next one is one with the horrible name, Operation Wetback. But in the 1930s, my great-grandparents lived in Holtzville, California. And because that was happening, they feared being separated, and they found themselves leaving with a lot of people back to Michoacan. So my grandmother and her siblings were all born here, I believe, except for the oldest, my Uncle Salvador. And so my grandmother, looking for a better future, came back. Then left my mother in Mexico with her aunts. And then she brought her family back, to work after I was born. I was just shy of 2, my mother and father. My mom had me when she was 15. And so here we are fighting for our immigration status. Ronald Reagan brought in the amnesty, and we became documented in 1989.
Okay.
Yeah, graduated from Oceanside High School.
Nice. Yeah,
So fast forward, a couple months after graduation, I meet John.
So you're born in Mexico,
Yes.
but what's your ethnicity?
Oh, okay. So I am Mexican, so that makes me indigenous, of African descent. My father has, when you look at him, he looks like an indigenous black man. And so people look at me and they're like, you kind of present very ambiguous. I'm like, oh, okay, well, what do you think I am? Well, are you Mexican? Yes. Oh, I thought you were black. Oh, yes. And people tend to think, do you identify as black because of your husband? And I'm like, no, I identify as black because that runs through my blood.
Yeah.
People forget that the transatlantic slave trade also impacted what we now call Mexico. So the Caribbean had probably more enslaved brothers and sisters than what we now know as the United States.
Right. And it's shocking to me that, that you were saying before when we were chatting about some things about that black people were escaping to Mexico to be free.
Yes.
Because they were free before.
Yes.
So, that was a little bit of history I didn't know. So.
Yeah. And you can read about Miss Harriet Tubman. She assisted a lot of folks to go to the underground, and some of them went to Mexico.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There's so many stories that are not told.
Yes.
So much stuff that we don't know. And it's slowly being uncovered right now. But
unless they ban the books and things that tell the stories.
That's going to be a really good session for y'all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
People either love it or they'll hate it, and I don't care.
Well, John, let's talk about you. Tell us about your upbringing and get us to the point where the two of you met.
Where we met and our honeymoon started. My name's John. I was born York, Pennsylvania, little town. I always tell people I'm from Philadelphia because nobody ever heard of York. Right? So York, Pennsylvania is about 20 minutes south of Harrisburg, the capital of Pennsylvania. Born there and raised there my whole life till I went to school. Went to school on a football scholarship, played a little ball, and then decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Joined thinking then, well, what am I going to do? Since I can't afford college, I want to finish college, but I can't afford it. The family couldn't afford to pay, especially where I was going to school. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'm going to go in the military and get that money so I can finish, right? Get my degree and move forward from there. And that's exactly what I did. I joined the Marine Corps. I thought, well, I'm going to go in the Marine Corps. I'm going to the military. Which one am I going to go in? I want to go to be the best, right?
Semper
Fidelis. I want to go to be the best. Right? Let's go. Saw all the commercials, right? And I'm like, oh, I can do that, right?
Oh, yeah, that's about him too, the commercials. Yep. What was the commercial you saw?
It was a Marine Corps officer fighting a dragon, had his dress blues on and a sword. Well. I want to fight dragons. I want the sword.
I know it well. Funny thing is, once I joined the Corps, I quickly realized that it's not as fun as I thought it was.
Dragons?
Where's the helicopters? And I want to do all the
cool stuff.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. It was a 9-to-5 job until went to the war. But before I went to the war, I met B maybe like 3 months before we went, so we got to spend a little time in 1990 before I shipped out when I shipped out in November, right after Thanksgiving.
November, right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And you guys, how'd you guys actually meet each other? Like, what was the first time you saw each other?
I just want to say I was looking a little busted. I never
That's what she
thought.
says.
I mean, I was wearing like Raiders sweatpants.
Yeah.
Was that okay that she was wearing Raider sweatpants though?
Yeah, at the time I didn't care. When I saw her, I thought, oh man, she's so fine. I got to talk to her.
It could have been any team you didn't like, and it didn't matter. Huh?
So we actually met on base. I was just hanging out with some of my buddies in the Corps. We had the music going in the room, and her friend pull up, in the parking lot. So we're looking down into the parking lot from the balcony. They pull up, and her friend, who was seeing another guy that I knew that was in the Marine Corps, I knew who he was.
She just asked me to go for a drive with her.
She didn't even know she was coming over there.
She's coming to stalk some guy, right?
Yeah. So they pull up, and when they pull up, and there's another guy that comes down, or a couple guys that come down, and to me, from what I could see, he looked like he was harassing them. Right? And And me and my friends are at the top. Me and my friends at the top, like, oh man, she's so fine. We're gonna go talk to her.
Go save her.
So I was like, well, I'm gonna get down because I'm faster than my friends. I'm gonna get down there first, right? So I book it down, and we're on the third deck, right? So I book it down there, and I just come over and ask her, is everything okay? You know, just trying to spark a conversation, right? And that's where it started.
Oh, that's cute.
That 300 PFT got you talking clear when you got downstairs. I'm not winded. How you doing?
How you doing, right?
What's PFT?
So PFT is the physical fitness test that Marines take. Yeah.
And
I'm civilian.
When I got down there, the guy, your friend, was having a little trouble with the guy. So my take is, well, he ain't here to see her. So I'm gonna take the liberty now to talk to her a little bit.
How cute.
Try to play the protective part.
And he did that well, yeah. What he didn't tell you was that he was such a great football player. The Yorktown, I mean, they idolized this person, John Palmer, the football player. So he's really humble in the way that he speaks about himself. But I mean, the moment you get off the plane and, you know, walk into York, everybody knows John Palmer, his high school, and just his kindness.
Now, was that something that you were kind of into when you were in high school, watching football games and watching football players?
Well, I mean, I did have this crush on this high school guy, and I remember my grandmother taught me to pray, and I would say, God, can you please bring me a husband that's a football player? You know, these kind of dumb things you pray for, like, and that he's really, really popular and really handsome. And he did.
Wow.
He brought me way more than I asked for.
Right. You know, you always ask for what you think you need, but God always tells you in another way of what you actually need.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So you guys both described growing up in like a little bit of a challenging situation. Did you have both of your parents? Was it a two-parent household for both of you?
You want to go first?
Yeah, mine wasn't a two-parent household. I grew up without my father. I mean, he was in town. I knew where he was. I had access to him, but he was not in the household. So when I turned, 10 years old, my granddad had passed away on my mom's side. So I went to stay and live with my grandmom so she wouldn't be alone. And it was only about 3 or 4 miles from my house. But I stayed at her house, and so she wouldn't be alone, and that's where I spent all my time. And then all my cousins, male cousins, and some of my uncles would always come. Grandma's house was the place, everybody came and hang out and eat. So I always had good male positive influences in my life.
Yeah.
I wasn't as fortunate. I did grow up on and off with a mother and a father, but my father passed away at the onset of COVID in Chicago. But he was, I think his upbringing, he never addressed his own childhood trauma, and it came out through his drug and alcohol addiction. And the life that he provided for us was very unstable, and we lived in a house of domestic violence. I can share that now because the last few years we reconciled, but there was probably a good, how many years did we? Probably 20 years that we stopped talking. The last few times he was very abusive to my mother, and we were often caught in the middle trying to help her. So my mother is a survivor of domestic violence, but then so am I.
Yeah,
my mother was because of a childhood domestic violence. And we're survivors of all kinds of child abuse. But one thing I knew was even in spite of all of the trauma, they taught us about hardworking. They both worked in the farm. My mother never went to school. She learned how to read and write as an adult through a program called INEA at Laurel Elementary School. And so, she can still write, but she writes probably like at a second grade level. But she has the mind of an engineer. Like she knows the soil, she knows agriculture so well. And both my mother and father were very hard workers. When he was healthy, when we didn't see the monster, he was a good man.
Yeah. John, did you ever have an opportunity to meet her parents?
Oh yeah, I have, and speaking about the tough times, I was there when some things have happened in the household, and I felt like I had to, stand in the way and protect her and try to do what I can to protect the family. And we could probably go into a couple stories that have happened. But the dad, they both, even to this day, Mom loves me, right? And I love her. And even your dad, he loved me. And at the time, your dad was not particularly happy about B seeing a black guy or going out or dating a black man.
Now that's interesting because you say he's black. He looks like a black man.
He presents like a black man, and that's something that is very common in the Latino culture, and I say that with a lot of respect and just with the understanding that we have a lot of growth to do, but he just wouldn't acknowledge his blackness. So. Yeah, he wasn't really happy that I dated, and we lived in a neighborhood that was, at one point the neighborhood was predominantly black, and then as time changed, it became Latino. But so racism was deeply ingrained in our family, and John got to see and experience some of that, but he also got to feel the love,
Yeah. It was nice to see when someone has, judgments or implicit biases about someone else of another culture. And then when they get to know the person, that starts to disappear. And then they become, who they actually are, and you fall in love with that person. I wish it was just that way,
My mother, it never really mattered to her. Like, she didn't really, we all had some things we needed to, work out with colorism, because you kind of follow what you're taught, right? Until you dismantle that.
Right.
But they fell in love with John, and my mom was always open. My dad, on the other hand, wasn't. But the reason why I call him Black Superman is because he got to see some of the really ugly stuff. I remember living in, do you want to tell them? Yeah.
You're living in where? Well, I'm sorry.
Center Street.
Yeah, you tell.
Yep. And my dad was on probably one of his worst times, and he was very high and probably very drunk, and took the car and would like he was fighting with my mother, and he had hurt my brother, and he would take the car and just ram it into the car in the front.
Yeah. They had an RV parked in the back of their house, and the driveway, if you would go straight, you would run right into the RV, and that's what he was doing. He was taking he had an old like 72 Camaro. It was a nice Camaro, but he was in one of his rages and was just, he would back up and slam full speed into that thing.
He was
and
trying
back
to hurt
up.
himself.
Yeah, and I happened to be there or come there that day.
Yes.
And when I first got there, I can hear, a bunch of noise in the house, like dishes being thrown and maybe china cabinets being tossed over. It was just like a lot of stuff going on.
We had just started dating.
On, right?
Oh, wow. So you're walking into this like...
Welcome to the family.
Like, what's going on? So I walk in, I walk in, and as soon as I walk in, he stops. He actually starts to cry and comes and hugs me.
Yeah.
I'm 20 years old at the time. I'm not, I knew my presence there had something to do with him stopping, but I couldn't understand or didn't understand, why are you coming to hug me? You in here acting this way,
Like a
right?
fool, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, okay, things are starting to calm down. And then that's when he goes outside and gets in his car. I hear the car start. He's leaving.
Yeah.
Then you hear this noise, bang, bang. It's like, oh my God, and the cops come.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a day for us, man. The cops come, and they come with their guns blazing, right? They got the guns out, putting us all on the ground. I got my nice little fit on, my jean
so
jacket.
you're on the ground.
Now I'm all dirty. Right?
Wow, because they don't know what's happening. You just call the cops. They don't know who's...
They don't know who's doing, right? So they got to secure the scene, right? So, and I understand that. But I'm back there in the backyard, face down in the dirt.
With guns.
With guns on me. And I look up, and there's a cop that's standing up on the fence with a shotgun pointed at me.
Wow.
Yes.
I thought...
Small town or what?
Right?
I thought, great. God, you brought this amazing man into my life, and now that's it,
Well, that's a test right there.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm looking at them, thinking, all he needed to do is slip, fall off that thing, and that's it for me, right? But that didn't deter me. I mean, I've been through some rough stuff.
I can't believe it came back.
He said that didn't deter me.
If I get through this,
it was the Raider sweats it was stuck in his mind.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And, you know, I'm just so blessed that he could see past all the trauma, and my siblings just adore him. They love him like a father, you know, and or like just this role model. And that's how we met.
Yeah. That's a nuts story.
Well, listen, before we go deeper into the relationship, we talked about a lot of trauma. Let's take a moment to talk about some therapy with our
sponsor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some therapy with our sponsors. BetterHelp. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in a world who's going through a hard time, therapy can give you tools to approach your life in a very different way. And this is why we're excited to tell you about our sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding therapy easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in the description. It's betterhelp.com/couplesunfiltered. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. When I lost my first wife to a terminal illness, therapy helped me navigate my feelings, as well as help me communicate with my children about losing their mother. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/couplesunfiltered. That's betterhelp.com/couplesunfiltered. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel.
So I have a question. Being that your example of growing up, that was your example of a man in the house, like a husband, what a husband and a wife, how that looks, and a father, and then you not having a father in your home. I don't know what you witnessed with your mom, but how did that affect your ability to say what kind of father in your mind you were going to be and husband? Like, did that affect?
It did, and in fact, we almost split up because of some things that we went through. But you know, I was raised in the church, right? Church of God in Christ, and so I had a close relationship with my God, and still do to this day. I always knew that because my father wasn't there for me when I was young, that I wasn't going to do the same thing, right? My kids are going to be number one in my life. So I pretty much was determined to have that work out and knew I could be successful at that. I didn't know how to be a husband, right? I didn't know how to be a man.
You didn't have that example.
I didn't have that example, right? I didn't know how to be the man that she needed, right? But the only thing I knew that I could go to was the Word of God, and I had a group, a men's group that I would go and hang out and get answers from, right?
Oh, that's great.
So it took me a little time to figure it out, and not to say that I got it all figured out, but I knew that some things had to change in me if I was going to be the man that she needed in her life, right?
You guys have 3 kids?
Yes.
3.
Okay.
So and 3 grandkids.
Yeah.
3 to be 4.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, we're so excited.
You just had one, right?
Yes.
I saw the pictures. Yeah, really cool. So then you are with a man who, in your mind, is the opposite of your dad, because he's rescuing you, he's being chivalrous, he's doing all of the things a man should do. And then you go into your relationship, and was everything kind of as you prayed for?
Yeah. Not at first.
We had some tension.
Yeah, we had a lot because the moment that I got just like that, I thought, oh gosh, he's my dad. You know, he's gonna turn into my dad. Like even if he would
behavior
anything,
like
triggered her,
like what?
like if he would say, "Can you pass me the pepper?" The salt
It could
shaker.
Yeah.
Like servantry type
Yes,
things?
because in my mind I would see what.
Like, can you fix me a plate?
Yes.
Yeah, that used to trigger me too.
Right?
Can you fix me a sandwich? Wow.
It was the dumbest thing,
Yeah.
you know.
But they are triggers, yeah.
Yeah,
They're like
triggers.
things.
So
It's
many,
like,
so many. If he would say like, I don't know if you should do that, I'd be like, why not? I could do whatever you know.
Yeah.
It would just put me in this space of like,
She was
you're not
going
gonna tell me what to do. You're not
Yeah.
gonna treat me the way my dad and be like, I just trying to ask a question.
so
you
do
know?
you feel like you had like 1 foot in, 1 foot out,
Yes.
always backup plan
Yes.
situation?
Always.
Yeah.
I always had to think of. I always knew, okay, what's my plan B?
Yeah.
Always.
I feel that. I always had that.
because I didn't have a plan B. Right.
So I
In my
always
mind,
talked about
this
divorce.
is it. Oh man.
I always thought if we divorce.
So if we divorce,
yeah,
okay. So you went in knowing there was a percentage that was probably larger that this might not work out.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the age at this point in time when you?
20? 20?
Oh my
Oh
goodness.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
you were
I was
strong-minded
22.
at 20.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we barely even know who we
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 are.
are.
yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And then with that,
Yeah.
like I said, we almost didn't make it. There came a year.
Yes.
What was it? It was Y2K, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we went through some things. Actually, she was ready to move out of the house.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, were you still in the Marine Corps at this time?
I don't think so.
No, I was out in the Marine Corps at that time. I was already working at Xerox, and yeah, we just to back up a little bit, she was determined not to let me treat her like her dad treated her mom.
Yes.
And anything I would say that remotely reminded her
Yeah.
of that, she would have a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to figure that out, right? That was part of my, part of my issue was, well, I couldn't understand why she was acting this way or saying these things, or, she didn't feel as committed as I was, right? Because I was raised and I knew once I got married, that was it for me. I ain't looking at no other women. There's no other,
Right.
My God says, you leave your parents' house, you leave and cleave, right? That was my mindset. But I felt
never
like
believed
she
that,
wasn't there.
You know?
Now, did you grow up with religion?
My grandmother
Vaguely.
was very faith-driven. My parents were Catholic. Like I did my first communion, but not really.
Not practicing.
No.
So then your motivation wasn't
No.
faithful
No.
or faith-filled.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I mean, I knew because they just talked about it, and I knew
Right.
my mother put up with a lot. And I didn't know, like, I always wondered, like, why doesn't she leave him? You know? And I knew the effect that it had on the children, and I was determined not to give that, like, I always thought, well, it stops with me.
Right.
Yeah,
And I don't remember what we were going through, but I remember it finally clicked to me, and I was like, she thinks I'm treating her like her dad. And I would have to tell her during arguments, I'm not your dad.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say those things,
Yeah.
She
It's hard.
finally started coming around. It took a minute, man.
Well, you're so
we even
young.
went to counseling. Yeah, we were
Yes.
Trying to
so
figure
young.
out how to even communicate that.
Yeah.
You were probably not even recognizing it. You were.
Oh, no, I didn't know.
Yeah, you're
It was
just like, I don't like
it's
that.
triggers.
Yeah.
It reminds me of
Yes.
my dad, but that's it. It just went
And
there,
it's
right?
interesting because the therapist never said that, I don't remember someone saying, B, some of this is coming from your childhood, your unresolved childhood trauma. Like, I just never remember them saying. It was always like, do you communicate? It was always about communication rather than really digging deep.
Or teaching you how.
Yes. Yeah. Until I just remember, like, I went to school, we talked about, social work, and, I started thinking about trauma-informed practices. I started thinking like, oh gosh, I have some unresolved issues, And so I used to want him to go to counseling with me, but then there came a point where I thought, wait a minute, And I'll tell you who really made this click. It was Will Smith and Jada. What's her name?
Pinkett.
Yes. I was listening to a conversation about how he is not responsible for her happiness. Yep. And I thought, that really like spoke to me. Then I thought, oh gosh, John is not responsible for my happiness. I am responsible for my happiness. And that then therapy just was a little different. It wasn't easy. It was very hard, you know, to accept that, like, look at the evidence. You know, he's here, you know, even when you want to leave. And it didn't become real until he was like, you want to go ahead and go. I'm staying here. You know, and there was a woman who came to invite him to church or something, and then I was like, oh, no, you're not.
You're like, wait a minute. What I said before?
Yeah, I didn't really mean that. Yeah. We were going through it at that time.
No.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember I was like, let me take my ears off.
You're like, this might get messy.
Yeah.
Kids, go to bed.
Yeah.
Who was, now you had a support system in the men at church. Who was your support system? Who was there to say, hey, look deeper?
Well, before you answer that, if you don't mind, when we were going through those things, we weren't going to church at that point.
No.
There was no support system
This
for me
is
either.
what made us go to church.
Okay, so you were like, you know what? I'm missing something.
Yeah.
That's exactly
That's
what he
why
said.
we're falling apart.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going back to what I know, what I
That's
grew
exactly
up on.
what I said.
And I said,
Nice.
and we were about to split up.
Yes.
She was leaving, and I said, well, like she said, you can leave. I'm not leaving. My kids need me again, because I didn't have a father growing up. I thought, I'm not leaving my kids. They need me.
Yeah.
And then she actually left for a few days. I don't know, probably hung out with some friends or something.
Yeah.
So once I got it in my head that, okay, she's not coming back. This is not working. I got to move on. I'm not going to, sit here and sulk and cry.
Yeah, right, right.
I'm a decent looking guy. I'm doing pretty well. I can go find me somebody. That was my thought, right? So I started going out with my buddies. Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, started going out with my buddies, and next thing I know, got a few numbers, right?
Yeah.
And then now they're calling the house.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then she happened to be there one time.
That's what it was. So it wasn't the church lady. It was the other lady.
Oh, a different lady.
Yeah.
She wasn't about church.
Yeah.
She called the house, and then did you answer the
Called
phone?
the house. She
I
answered
must
the
have
phone.
picked up the phone. Yeah.
And it's, don't call my house. She went off on the girl, and I knew, I'm like, that's over right there.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't even that serious to me, but just the
Right.
fact that she's moving on, I got to move on.
Oh, you're in your
right?
20s. You're trying to figure out what
Yeah.
moving on looks like.
Exactly,
So, got to build
exactly.
your confidence up, and if
Yeah.
somebody's interested, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at that point, then we were like, okay, she was ready to come back then.
Okay,
Yeah.
she just needed a little break.
You need a little
did.
break. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, then we're
And
going
your
back to
kids are
church.
small. What were the ages of the kids at the time?
John was in elementary school. Grace was probably in middle school.
Oh, that's
And-
enough right there.
Yes.
The middle
and
school
then,
kids.
And Tiani was a baby.
Yeah, I
She was
tell you,
little baby.
That's a
Been here
lot.
at that point.
So
Yeah.
you probably just got super
Oh, she wasn't
overwhelmed.
born.
She might
She
have
wasn't
been born
even
at that
born
point. She
yet.
was born at
Okay.
8.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she wasn't born. Once I realized things were real, like it just forced me to really think about, okay, what is happening with this life of mine,
What are you bringing to this problem?
Yes, yes. And I knew that I started just doing like a self-assessment of our marriage. And I'm like, okay, well, he doesn't do this. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't, like kind of, here's all the list of what I knew my father was. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Like things aren't aligning, right? And so that's, I think, then it took a little work because then when I was ready, he wasn't quite ready.
That's when the work started.
And that's when some of our work really started.
Yeah.
Like praying together, going to church, like just surrendering. Like
Yeah.
we had to surrender together, And that's when your ego starts getting in the way.
That's a vulnerable place to be,
Yeah.
to surrender and pray together. Praying together is deeper than a lot of people realize, especially if you are like, looking at each other and talking about what you want to pray about before you pray. When you hear the other person praying with the one voice and you're sitting there listening to that, it's very emotional because it's like your thoughts,
It's deep. It's spiritual.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for us, it was grounded in faith. you know, but for somebody else, it could be grounded in, you know, a therapist and mental health. But for us, I knew, like when John said, I'm going to go back to the only thing I know, which is his faith.
Yeah.
And I started to see like a little change. I thought, well, I think I want some of that. You know? I think I want some of that peace.
Yeah, that's great. Aw.
Oh, that's lovely. So how has, you know, you're back together, you're raising children. How's the communication working between the two of you now that you have a foundation and now you're raising the children?
Feel a little safer now.
Yeah. How's that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, our life changed completely because then everything was about service. You know, I think our anchor became, you know, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and going to church together. So raising our kids in the church became really important. And
serving in the church.
Serving in the church. And we brought our kids along, you know.
Yeah.
Our
So that
kids
really,
served with us.
that really helped the communication. You know, it's a funny thing. You're learning, you're growing, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be facing things that you don't know. Not necessarily that you're going to face them, but you don't even know how you're going to deal with those things. And now, you know, we've learned through that to just turn it over to God, let him handle it, and you know, try to seek what his will is and get on board with that, right? That's the best way to do it.
You know, but in full transparency, the church doesn't really offer opportunity to get mental health services. I mean, you have we went through some really good courses that some of them John led on marriage. Like we had some really good community building in church, but it was never addressing like some of the deep issues, you know? So I found myself going back to therapy, you know?
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't really expect John to come because it was more about the healing that I needed.
Right. Yeah, you should be on your own with that if you do a couples therapy together, but to do it on your own when you have so much, there's a lot of people that have so much trauma they don't even recognize as trauma because a lot of people, especially generationally, were going through similar things. You know, we all joke around about how our parents used to, you know, yell at us and get in before the street lights come in and beat us with a belt and all these things. But it doesn't mean that it didn't affect you negatively, you know, and how you move forward in your life with your relationships. I mean, I can relate to a lot of those things, you know, you talk about, and I had a lot of triggers too with the way my father behaved with my mother. And one of my biggest pet peeves growing up, I used to always say, is that I'm annoyed by women who are weak. And my version of weak was always my example, which was my mother tolerating my father's abuse and being young and saying things like, when are you going to tell him we're divorcing him? You know, and I'm like 10.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking her this every day.
Folks' business.
Right. And because I'm listening to all of the things in the background, him hitting her, him yelling at her, and then him getting drunk and yelling at us and hitting us. And, you know, you grow up and you form your opinions about what type of man is out there for you.
That's right.
And some of the bad stuff is also incorporated in that, right? Like I always joke around all the time about when I first met him and he was on the campus and, you know, he was a drill instructor. So that voice he has when he yells is just ridiculous. You know, it's very intimidating. And, you know, he would yell across the campus to kids, and he wasn't yelling angry, but he would say, tuck your shirt in, or, you know, whatever he would say.
Say
and
that
it was
one more
so
time.
loud. And he would come in my health center, and he would be talking to these kids, and it would turn me on. And I'm like, oh, that's a problem that I'm turned on by him being aggressive. You know what I mean? To these kids. Yes, right? Because I'm like, that's daddy issues. And I mean, it's because my dad used to yell at us like that. And so, of course, it didn't turn me on then, but, you know, it's what I'm familiar with, what I'm comfortable with. And you think about how that affects your relationship. So, I mean, he's a teddy bear. He's not like that in real life. You know, that's that's the person he plays on TV.
I can't even imagine him.
No, it's so crazy.
I get that.
Yeah.
As a person, you got to be
Oh,
at
yeah.
certain times.
Exactly.
And I mean, it's convincing. It's very convincing. Actually, what's funny is when he gets angry, he actually whispers. He gets, like, his voice gets really low, right? And so I tell the kids that all the time. I'm always telling them, when Master Sergeant says frickin' daggone, you're in trouble, because that's as much cursing as you're gonna get from him. Yeah, that's his curse word. But anyway, I mean, and so you go through your life thinking, well, this is normal. This is what everybody experiences. This isn't like unusual. You talk to your friends you grew up with, they all kind of have similar stories. So you just think that's the way it is.
You do.
But it really messes with you.
Yes.
It's I call it an emotional duck. So if you're constantly getting hit, you get used to ducking.
Yes.
So emotionally, you're ducking. When you feel something coming, you just, somebody's about to slap me, you duck.
Yeah.
Where did you guys find the place where, when did you find the place where you started to feel safe and your walls started to come down?
Yeah, I think probably in the last 10, 15 years. 10, 15 years where I knew he wasn't leaving.
Yeah.
I could break something, rip something, yell, and he was still there. I'm like,
you're like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Because internally, maybe I was thinking he would leave, but, I'm like, this guy takes everything, you know?
But it's not that he's taking it, right? He loves you.
Yeah.
I didn't
that's
realize
what
that
love
it was love.
looks
Yes.
like.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's so strange. Even to this day, like I'm shocked every day that I look at him after I've had like a, perimenopausal moment. And I'm like, how do you want to like love on me after I just behave that way?
Yes.
It's not what's wrong with him. It's not what's wrong with us. It's just that's how they love.
And I'm not saying he's perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
None of us
There
are.
is no such thing as perfection.
Right.
I don't want to paint this false narrative of like he is perfect.
Yeah.
Right? But like I love him through the imperfection because I know that it's authentic, it's not ill-willed, it's not intended to hurt me, and the evidence of him continuing to be like my number one is always there.
Right. But that's still very unique. And that's very admirable because not everyone evolves to a point where their ego can be put aside. And in the relationship, you say, it's not about that I didn't win this fight or that I am not right in everything I do or that you're not doing everything I want you to. We always say it's when there's a problem that you guys are having, it's you two against the problem, right? Instead of you guys fighting, over the problem. It's the both of you on one side and there's the problem. Let's talk about this problem. And that's half the battle, right? But no, I think that's beautiful. And
I think also as a man, you have to learn how to navigate those things. When I say navigate, I have to pick the battles that are important, right? There's some things that I'm just not going to put up with, and she knows that. But there's a lot of things I'm like, I really don't. Whatever you want. If we're going to go somewhere, where do you want to go, sweetheart? Let's do that. I'll put some ideals, right? But, as long as she knows that what's important to me is her being happy.
Right.
I want her to be happy.
Yeah.
Because when she's happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Right. When she's upset, I'm upset, and I'm like, why am I getting upset? And I didn't do anything or say anything wrong. What's going on with my wife? Let me find out what's happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
But on the same side, like I said, the same thing of that is I'm not going to put up with certain things, right? Because as a man, I think we have to learn how to navigate women. And,
that's a hard
God
thing to do.
has taught me how to do that to a degree. Right?
And so did your mother, I'm sure.
I'm sure did my mom.
Oh, yeah. She's a very strong,
Yes, she is.
loving woman. What I do want to say is that I think when there was a pivotal moment in our relationship, when I went back to school, because I feel like I've been in school so long.
Oh, my goodness. That's another journey.
And you're getting your doctorate right now, right? Or
Yeah,
did
so
you get
I'm on leave because I got cancer.
Okay.
So breast cancer. But I kept going back to school, and I saw that he was taking care of the home. He took care of the kids. I would sleep in, so he would take the kids to the park so I can get some sleep. If I'm working in the community, like taking care of dinner,
The house,
like the
taking care of everything,
house,
right?
yes. And I thought, okay, well, that's only gonna be for my bachelor's. And I went for my master's, and I would stay up all night doing homework and going to school.
I mean, pulling all-nighters, 24 hours. Wouldn't sleep for like a couple days at
And
a
then
time.
here
Like,
comes John with like, hey, do you need a cup of coffee?
So don't you want to eat today?
I brought you a little snack. And I'm like, this guy,
See, in my mind, that's the mission.
Yes.
Right? I'm thinking,
Exactly.
this is what we're doing together. She wants to go back, pursue her education, get her master's, a doctorate.
Yeah.
This is what we got to do.
Yeah.
Who's going to do it for us if we don't do it together, right?
It's part, your life goes on. Regardless if you're in a marriage, your life can still progress. You can still do these things. All the dreams you want to achieve, they're still out there. Shouldn't slow it down. The fact that you're so supportive is great. I mean, how could you not? How could you do it? How could you do it without a supportive partner?
Yes. And then we got I go in for my annual, and I always get abnormal mammograms, but this one came back, and I knew something was off. The
radiologist?
Yes. She said, the technician.
Oh, okay.
She said something, and maybe she shouldn't have, but she said, who in your family has breast cancer? And I was like, okay.
Yeah, she shouldn't have said
something.
Yeah.
So
they were a little upset with her
that was
at
a
that
little
office
different.
after that.
We got the letter. I'm like, okay, I always have to go back. And then from there, like I knew just something was off. John came with me, and from there they said, okay, you have to get an ultrasound. From there, you have to get a biopsy. That all in the same day. We just kept moving from that room to room, and I was like, this is different. And so just seeing, like I was afraid of, like my body was going to look different. There was a possibility. That was one of our options. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? And he never wavered, he just was like, okay, we're going to get through this together.
Yeah.
And some days, like, I don't really remember it being bad, but he said, well, you don't remember the nights you were up crying. But I think that was when I finally, that was just 3 years ago. What is it, 2 years?
Yeah, going on 3.
When I finally thought, okay, this is forever,
Yeah.
And ever since we were young, I would say we were going to grow old together.
Yeah.
Like we got married, we're going to grow old together. And I don't think she believed that at the time.
No.
Oh, man.
But just think about that trajectory of where you guys were and all the things you went through. And then you had to go to church together and pray together. It's like all those moments are building up to you actually trusting that this man, when it comes to my life, he wants me here to live, and he wants to go through this with me, regardless as if I'm being a bee or not.
Yes.
He wants me alive to be a bee. If I have to be a bee. And he wants me there.
Yeah.
If you look back on all that, it's like, that's why we had to go through all that stuff.
Yeah.
I wish we had like a camera where we can kind of look ahead and relax through those hard times a little more. Like people always say, what would you tell your former self if you had the ability to go back? And I would just say, hey, ride the wave a little less stressed out. Know that what's on the other side is going to be good. So if something bad happens to you, just be able to kind of meditate through it, because it will be what's best for you at the end, even if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
You do a good job of that, though. I mean, she tells me that I'm patient, but she really is. And we're able to teach each other.
Nice. Reciprocity.
Yeah.
That's growing.
And it's really good. And I mean, with us being on Life Part 2 and allowing us to, see ourselves and careers.
Yeah, and that's how you grow. That's how you grow together as a couple, right?
Exactly.
And you guys have been married 23 years, right?
32.
32.
I had it backwards.
32.
Dyslexic.
It's all right.
So I really am dyslexic, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, like in my mind, I had it 23. So if you guys, so wait, 23, 32. So next year is 33. Have you guys ever went back and looked at your vows?
We have not.
Did you do the traditional vows, or did you do? Did you write your own vows?
No, we just did.
We went down to a little coffee shop. I call it the coffee shop. We went down. There used to be a little place over here in Vista.
It's called I Do Weddings.
Called I Do
Okay.
Oh, funny.
Yep. So we went there. Got some of my Marine Corps buddies together to be my best man, right?
Nice.
My best man and a couple other guys. And that was all that was there for me. None of my family was there, right? Because we did it so fast.
Yes.
Right.
We did.
And you had your mom and some of your
My
friends
mom and my
there.
dad came. My dad was healthy at that period, and so he came, and my mother was pregnant. And,
Wow.
yes, and I know, and I didn't really understand the the concept of vows, really. I mean, I knew that you read something.
Yeah.
But
she's 18 and I'm 20 at the time.
Yeah, you're just trying to figure out the heck this all means anyway. And so you guys, have you ever done like a renewal or like never no anniversary party, nothing?
We haven't done any renewal or anything like that.
Would you guys like consider that now that you're coming up? When's your anniversary?
It just passed in August.
August 2nd.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Well, I know that I have brought it up a few times, and I know John at the time was like, but the first ones we said were good, you know?
Yeah. Well, not necessarily vows, but just to kind of like celebrate you survived all the challenges of marriage in 32
we kick it around.
years.
We talk about it, but we haven't
2025, August 2nd.
August 2nd.
Is that a Saturday?
Okay.
We're there.
That's a Saturday.
We'll pencil it in.
Yes.
We're expecting an invitation.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, man.
Yeah. You know, at the beginning, you mentioned a lot of like my community work. And what I want to add to that is oftentimes the person who's doing like the front face work gets all the recognition and, you know, all the credit, like, oh, you're doing all of this. But in our marriage, like if I didn't have a strong anchor at home aside from my faith, I couldn't be able to do all that,
Exactly.
you know? So yeah, like it's usually they go, B, you're doing all this work. But what they don't see is who's at home so that I can do this work.
It's your support system.
You know, who makes sure that there's clean underwear in the drawer because they don't just appear, you know.
They don't? Mine are always scary.
You must have the same Barry that I have.
I wear clothes and the next day they're clean and hanging back up. I don't know how they...
Yes. And they're all nicely organized and folded.
Folds my underwear.
You know, the towels are folded the way that I
she
like
likes
them
them.
folded. I'm like, how does that happen?
You know what? We have this thing about getting people on this podcast. We have unicorns. We get these unicorn men on
They're out
on
there.
this podcast.
Yes.
If you find one that loves you, they're out there. They're just hard to find.
Or when you're dealing with like things like racism and systemic oppression, and you're like all day, you know, fighting all the isms, right? And trying to advocate and stand up for justice, and then you come home and you're like, I just need to talk about this.
She needs a vent.
You know, and I'm just so thankful that I have a safe place at home.
That was another thing. Among the many things that I've learned or we've learned, I've learned that she doesn't always want an answer.
Yeah, she
Right?
just wants an ear.
She just wants an ear. It took me a little while because I'm trying to take care of and fix
Problem
everything,
solvers.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And one day she told me, it's like, I just need you to listen. It's like, okay. So then I got it in my mind. Okay, I'm gonna listen. Does she want me to? No, I'm gonna just listen. I'm not gonna say
Listen for
anything.
the question.
Yeah, listen for the question, right? Because she'll go. You know, she's out. You know, in the community, getting beat up, right? Doing all this work, and then I don't want her to have to come home and, you know, got to work some more. You know what I mean? Come home, it's peaceful.
Safe place to land.
Safe place, right? You don't have to worry about that out there. I always tell that out there is the world. There's a lot of trouble out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
We talk about communication. You mentioned a very valid point. Communication is not just speaking. It's listening too.
That's right.
You know, there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but I love it. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth.
That's right.
And if we learn how to listen, the communication gets better.
Yep.
So I'm glad that you both have found that the safety, the peace, you realize that John is not dad.
Yes, yes.
And you are not your dad.
Yes.
And you're able to find each other. So
Yeah.
so happy that you came here and shared your love with us.
Oh,
Really appreciate
thank
it.
you for inviting us
Yeah,
and for
happy to do
being
it.
just so patient, you know. Because I know Tiani, our daughter, was like, Mom, you know,
She's been trying for a
can you
while.
please call Mr. Lyle?
Lionel.
Lionel, yes. And she was just, so I'm so thankful for my daughter that knew this would be a good match.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys raised a good one there.
Oh,
Yeah, we do pat ourselves on the back.
Yes.
For all three
All
of them
three.
now, right? They're
Yeah.
doing well.
They're just
We're proud of them.
incredible human
right?
beings.
I don't know if we told them that they just took us to Texas
Yes.
Yeah, we saw.
Okay, yeah. So they took me to my Eagles game. Got to watch the Eagles beat up on the Cowboys. It was fantastic. You know, to go to Jerry World and see the announcers out there that you always see on TV. I mean, it was fantastic. It was a great time.
Nice.
And it didn't cost me a penny, other than the flights to get there. But
you gotta love that.
Gotta love it,
That's
right?
goals. That's parent goals right there.
The kids are paying back now a little bit.
Exactly.
It's so nice. It's rewarding. But we're thankful for them. So when our granddaughter comes, we're going back in January to Texas. She'll be here January 4th.
Well, whenever she decides.
Yeah, supposed to be due the 4th. So we're gonna go back at the 24th. We're going.
The 24th.
Yeah,
through the
we'll spend a little
29th.
time with her. We're looking forward to that. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, again, thank you both for being here. And to all of you out there, thank you for being a part of Couples Unfiltered. We love having these conversations, and please continue to listen, like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again.